Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining for episode 283 of Navigating Now, powered by Thaudium. I am so excited for our conversation today. I have the great pleasure of working with a wonderful woman who has the great intersection and skills of understanding what it actually looks like to lead at scale without losing yourself in the process. We're going to talk about the neuroscience of stress to the real cost of giving people your quickest instead of your best. So excited to introduce Ryan Hirsch to talk about stepping into bigger roles that shouldn't mean stepping into bigger stress. Thank you, Ryan, for coming. How are you today?
Makenzi, thank you. And thank you to the Thaudium team. It is great to be here. I'm doing well. It's so good to see you.
Yes, welcome. Welcome to Navigating Now.
Thank you.
This is going to be, Ryan, just such a relevant conversation. I think you're a leader with a background in neuroscience, which is just so much fun because you have this really unique and deeply relevant perspective on what it takes to be a high impact leader who can genuinely connect to the human experience, which we at Thaudium absolutely love. I personally love. So I'm really excited for this conversation today. So to dive in, would you mind just first telling us, introducing who you are, what you do, and what you enjoy most about your work?
Absolutely. Well, thank you again. I'm really excited to dig in, but I'll start with a bit of background on me. So I serve as a global SVP of client service at Gerson Lehrman Group, or GLG. We are the world's leading platform for trusted human expertise. So in that, GLG connects our clients across different industries and segments to subject matter experts or industry professionals, other key opinion leaders across the globe, to really help them carry out or further their industry research, or get smart on a range of topics. And in case anyone is maybe less familiar with that, we're doing that by facilitating these different engagements in the form of things like expert interviews, surveys, in-depth advisory work, and much more. In my role specifically, I lead a global commercial organization of client-facing teams and leaders, and I oversee enterprise partnerships with consulting firm clients, and that's worldwide. I'm also setting, the strategic direction for my book, and what I'm working toward is ultimately driving service excellence, overall commercial performance, and then thinking about long-term partnership growth and opportunities there too. What I find so neat is that at its core, GLG is really it's a learning firm, and so we're serving as this nexus between client firms and subject matter experts, and again that spans those different industries and spaces and even regions. Our internal organization is made up of such bright, capable, and thoughtful professionals and leaders, and I think when I'm surrounded by those insights and ideas and just these communities of expertise, it becomes such a rich environment to work in. I guess one last thing I'll add in is when I'm hosting associate candidate interviews for our entry-level position, I'll get asked the question quite often of what has kept me at GLG? And I actually hit my 10-year mark next month, which
I didn't know that. Congrats! How exciting!
It's insane to say it out loud, but I'm getting the question a lot of why stick around for so long? And I think my question that I'm getting and my answer to it really hasn't shifted. Not only have I've been able to accelerate and grow in my career path, I find a lot of meaning and fulfillment in this opportunity to shape others' career paths and support my people and commercial leaders and build and contribute to a high performance culture.
I love that, Ryan. Congrats. First and foremost, 10 years. That's incredible. And I think it speaks volumes to the fact that you've stayed. And I love this, that you're able to shape how people grow and build towards something really meaningful. And I think that's really powerful. And that's definitely been something you've been putting some work into, because you just stepped into a massive global leadership role at the end of 2024. So talking about shaping growth at a huge scale.
Yeah.
When you're managing teams across multiple regions, cultures, time zones, everything's happening at once. Those inevitable inherited macro challenges, they don't quite wait for you to settle in and say, okay, wait, like what's the lay of the land? Who do I go to for this? Like the world is moving.
Absolutely.
So what did that like transition actually feel like in the first 90 days as you took on this kind of increase?
Yeah. I think the first few months of like stepping into this wider, now global role, I think the time period was, it was exciting. It was challenging. It was certainly intense. I was learning about so many new people and teams that are now sitting in my broader organization. I'm thinking about like, what are their unique needs, but also their strengths and opportunities? What are their goals? And again, that's across those different regions, across different teams. And then like, what are the connecting forces? How do I unite those teams and these leaders and really like cast a vision for the org, and then begin to set this like framework of expectations as well. Makenzi, I think, admittedly, it was more as like time went on that I started to feel maybe even more of that like intensity and that like came at this like very quick velocity. And then I felt a sense of pressure and certainly coming from within. I think experiencing people and leadership transitions as a lot of organizations do. Sometimes we saw softness in the market and face demand challenges. And like, personally, like I was absorbing additional responsibilities like due to those different transitions and thinking about like bouncing across distributed time zones. And, this will be unsurprising to those I work with. Like I hold myself to a high standard to really deliver commercial results, within my teams, but also to protect morale. Try and be as resilient as we can be against more of these like macro conditions or dynamics. And I would think a lot, like even despite those challenges or these pressures, like I'm asking myself, how do I also appear to just like not miss a beat?
Oh, just speaking to my heart right now, Ryan, because it is. And like, I first appreciate your like passion for the work that you do and wanting to like connect people and needs and goals and like cast this vision for the org, especially as that vision broadens and that people broadens. But there is an intensity in that, and you trying to reach this high standard, a personal standard as a perfectionist in us all of wanting to do this and show up that you're not missing a beat, that you're seeing it all and you're knowing everything that's happening. And this pushing harder towards that. Like I imagine on a global scale, there's a little bit of a risk of like a 24-hour a day, 7 days a week working loop that you can fall into. So how do you recognize that working harder is no longer serving you or your global teams?
It's a good question. Like, I think more historically, like I've associated this like overworking with reward. Like if I did something at a higher intensity, I would do better. I would perform at a higher level.
Oh, speaking of my soul, Ryan, I can't. If I just do it harder, more intensely, it'll all work out.
Right. But I think especially as you just alluded to, like in this role, it does come with a higher risk. And I think I was probably like 5 to 6 months in, and I was overextending myself, right? Like I felt more and more like this sense of potential burnout. I felt that my energy was more depleted. And what I realized is like that will and it has had an impact on my team's performance, my ability to give them like space and autonomy and really just to like maintain our culture. And so I think with that in mind, like those pieces of like its impact, I needed to make, I would say, like more active adjustments to really break out of that loop or that cycle and consider like, where can I like more effectively delegate, thinking about leverage our scale, which my manager, direct manager is great at really kind of encouraging me to do. And then I think also like rooting our team culture in more of that collaborative problem solving, being able to experiment, but like experiment safely. And I think there were times, listen, I'm very fortunate. I work with an incredible set of leaders across regions, but I would turn, especially to my deputy leaders, and say, like, I need your help.
And how do you, and Ryan, I love you recognizing like the incredible leaders that you work with and that you're collaborating with and you're seeing. So like, as your role expanded and you're kind of like looking up and across and you're like, okay, unfortunately, I do need to sleep at some point and to be able to lean on the people around me.
Yeah.
What did you have to learn about delegation and scale so that you could lead effectively without overextending yourself?
Yeah. And I think what's coming to light a lot is like, I'm still obviously like learning and practicing these things, but I've thought about a few things here. I think, certainly better empowering not only our leaders, but our broader talent to, take on more of that ownership and kind of, flex more and take on growth opportunities, certainly, like I said. And I think, more personally is like redefining my meetings cadence and structures so that I could allow for more team problem solving and promote more of, like I said, that collective decision making. And I think even tactically speaking, like I worked with my leaders to launch different global groups or committees so we could solve around things like project management or client relationship building, and even some of the specialized content areas that we support. So thinking about like healthcare and life sciences. And I think as I reflected on, being able to delegate and again, empower, I still have, I think, this need for information. I love being informed of what's going on so that I have again, this pulse on the org and our operations. However, I think what I learned is like that needs to be balanced with the autonomy and with the space, especially for my more tenured or experienced leaders. And so how do I balance that need for like an update or that need for data with autonomy? And so sometimes that might look like just getting a quick digest and then taking a step back. And I think that became really, again, important because it's allowing for my teams and leaders to grow and also like ideate and innovate as well. There's so much more from the collective whole than just one person doing it.
I love that. And I think you're speaking, Ryan, to attention that a lot of leaders and a lot of people honestly face of this recognizing like, oh, I need to tap into the power and intelligence of the team and the people around me. And I need to delegate and let go, but there is a challenge to let go and to give that power to the folks around you. So I commend you for recognizing this. And you said something important. It's an ongoing learning. It's something that we're continuously doing.
Yeah. And you want to stay active with it and keep sort of deploying these different, strategies as well.
I love that. Yeah. Now, something I've been really excited to talk to you about, Ryan, because you have a background in neuroscience, which I love a nerd. So let's get into it. Let's get into it.
I'm a neuro nerd.
Yeah. So I think it just like, it gives you a front row seat to how brain chemistry works and how it shifts under pressure. Cortisol rises, amygdala fires. Like let's talk about it. And from a neurological standpoint, when you're thinking about like, okay, maybe I haven't been delegating, I'm taking on too much, I'm trying to work 24/7. Like, what are the warning signs of chronic stress? And at what point do you realize like, okay, I think I might be heading towards burnout?
Yeah. I'll start with a little bit more context before kind of getting to like, what are the signs?
Give us your credit.
I'm going to like foreground it a little bit, but I mean, the question's so great. I will say like, I've had the privilege of working not only with like my set of leaders in my organization, but also under, other outstanding leaders who have really invested in my growth and my career. And I think one of the examples of that is, my organization connected, peers of mine, as well as me, with an executive coaching platform. It was like a third party. And through that program, I was able to meet like regularly with an executive coach, which was so valuable. I cannot stress that enough. But they would recommend like podcasts and reading material and newsletters that I was, subscribing to. And one of their recommendations actually was a book that I've just started and I need to dive in. But it's a book that's come out with like multiple editions since it's authored, called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And it's quite the title. The reason, listen, like the reason I mentioned that book and this, like the work with the executive coach, is just like thinking about the takeaway and, managing and coping through stress. The takeaway from the book and like reading some of the like Psychology Today and other articles around it. And like I said, I'll be diving in more so, but at least at a high level, the example that they use is zebras, and like zebras can handle like these more like acute physical stress episodes because their nervous systems will return to baseline like after the stressful episode occurs. And so
after
like
the lion's chasing them,
the lion's chasing,
they can re-regulate.
Is incoming, totally, right? So and that's different from like human beings, because our stress response can be like continually activated. And so you can run the risk of that more sustained or chronic stress. It's not just that, like I said, that acute element. And so you just mentioned the amygdala, and I love that you have this like knowledge as well, Makenzi, is like when that stress shows up in our brain, like the amygdala, which is of course like the center of emotional processing, it becomes more active, and our prefrontal cortex, which is essentially like your command center, and it's like for decision making and self-regulation, that slows down. With that said, like even having that knowledge and even being aware of what I think is going on, not only have I experienced like ongoing stress, I've needed to rely on resources to manage through it. And it has been difficult at times. And I think I realize when I'm so stressed is when I'm less flexible, my thinking might become like more rigid. I will have a fear of doing something, and if I'm not able to do it, quote, perfectly, that could mean failure. And I think, again, working with the coach and working with my leadership, those working with me in my org, I've been able to experience, I think, more of a turning point in the last few months, especially, and think about like, how do I manage these like different triggers, recognize the signs, and then begin to re-regulate as well.
I love this. And thank you for the book rec. I love a good book rec. And this is one that it gets the gears turning, because you'd think the life of a zebra would be profoundly more stressful than us sitting at our desk managing emails.
Yeah.
But
we're not being chased by lions as we're answering these different questions and pumping out deliverables.
Yeah, it speaks volumes to the way that our brains regulate post these stressful situations or when it's cortisol rising. And I appreciate you naming some of the things you recognize in yourself when that prefrontal cortex is maybe not turned on. You're not making the decisions like you would, less flexible, maybe a little more fear of doing things, rigidity in your thinking, and being able to manage these triggers. And I know, Ryan, when we were just chatting and kind of anticipating this call and prepping a little bit, you said something that I think was so profound that I want to bring up here as you're talking to this. And you said, and I think this came up too when you were talking about resources.
Yeah.
And I love the coaching call out. I just do need to make, we love coaching. And I think being able to bring this up, and I think this came up in one of your coaching conversations, an insight that you had. And again, just like the power of coaching. You said, are people getting my best or my quickest?
Yeah.
And I just think in this like fast moving global environment where decisions happen literally around the clock, like how do you personally make this call in real time? Because that is such a real call to make.
Definitely. And I think I go back to what I said earlier, is like it really is like this continued work in progress. I like how you painted the picture, and you did it really well, Makenzi, is like, my teams, we are working in a high volume, like very fast paced space. Sometimes like quickest can feel like not only is it, efficient, it's also, it can feel like it's the most effective. And I think in my role and leading, again, like not only a larger team, but one that has, more complexity and different needs and experiences, what I have found useful is taking a pause. And it's really being able to consider like, what is my response, and not simply react. And again, I'm working on that more and more. I'm asking questions like, what are the stakes more strategically speaking? Again, what's the complexity of the problem or the opportunity at hand? And I think about, more recently, I went through a large commercial renewal process. I think about when we've gone through transformation efforts within the firm, you want to, again, continue to address things like team recognition and morale. Like, I think those things would demand my best and like my full presence. And then there's kind of other areas that I've started to like figure out of like, okay, you need a data point commercially, or maybe it's a pulse check on like, does this branding element make sense on collateral that we've developed for our clients? And those I can deliver more quickly. And also like, I want to be able to kind of checkpoint and move forward. And again, those just may not require as much time. And so I think having more of that discernment has been really helpful. And I think what's really impressive is like leaders and teams, they understand like when you might just need more time or a moment. But like I said, I think this is certainly a work in progress. I have found myself wanting to feel on around the clock. I find myself wanting to fire off in the name of speed. But again, moving from execution to strategy and scale, like the pausing is really important.
Thank you for naming this, Ryan, because I think especially in the immediacy of today's digital world, like we have access, and like you saw the problem come in on your inbox. It's right there. It's 11 p.m. You're like, should I just get up and answer this because it's right here, and they'll want a response now. And this discernment you talk about, or being like, okay, am I going to be able to provide my best? Am I going to be able to show up my best just by responding immediately or solving this right here? So I loved this question, like, are people getting my best or quickest? And I think that the pause can be really profound to just, like I said, give your prefrontal cortex a minute to catch up and be like, okay, do I need to respond to that right now? Totally. Am I showing up my best if I do?
I'm tempted. I'll wake up and see something and go, oh gosh, I want to put out the fire. I want to problem solve. And again, it's that like reward system of like, wait, okay, let's sort of like, again, like take it, control and take it back and think about, what ultimately will be the effect.
I love that reward system thing. I think that's a good way to think about it. I love that.
I have felt it too many times.
Okay, so I know, and you said this is a work in progress.
Yeah.
So when you do find yourself in maybe a pattern of responding, of doing the thing, of getting quick, and you can see this kind of stress rut being built, what are the like behaviors or practices that you do that help you break the cycle?
Yeah. I guess like something I would touch on to start, Makenzi, is like, speaking of that coach, I think as I partnered with the executive coach, I came to realize that when you're under more sustained stress or you're feeling like that sense of dysregulation, my core strengths, which one of them is attention to detail. I love being, very aware and organized in that sense. But again, with the stress mixed in, it can flip into more of a derailer. And maybe it's a need to feel like we've got to be perfect, or I need to be perfect. And my concern is that if I'm bringing this set of like skills and strengths and experiences, but they're not showing up or I'm not showing up in a way that's useful or that's impactful with that set of, or that portfolio, I do need to break the cycle. And I think there's a few like practices that I've been able to implement. I think the first is more of that like mental reframing, especially when you're in the face of challenges. One of the questions that I sometimes ask, especially when I'm like faced with a change, is like, well, why this change? Like I'm asking questions that begin with why. And I think rather than asking again, like why this change? Why are we, restructuring this thing? I think approaching it with more curiosity and asking a question of what instead, like what is the thinking behind the change, or like what can I do to better engage with this change, or what resources might I need or my teams need. And I think just that small adjustment, but quite mighty adjustment, can be really helpful in like processing changes or again, like any sort of challenges. Another thing I'll mention is I've started adopting, I would say like more recently, is like time blocking. One of the things I've heard leaders say when they block off times on their calendar, and my coach has said this before too, they call them like worry appointments.
Ooh.
Yeah, which is like, okay, like, all right, I need to worry about this. I will have an appointment for that. It'll be on my calendar, and I love that. I have
Designated time to stress out.
I like, okay, clocking it, worry about that later. But I've called them like strategy hours. But again, it's like carving out that more dedicated time to do the strategizing. It's to think at this like higher altitude. And I think for me, I do quite a bit of like reflecting and prep for the week. I'll do it on a Sunday. I'm not telling everyone to do this on a Sunday. Again, it can fall during the week. Sometimes my strategy hours do fall during the week, but I really thrive off having these like more dedicated moments to not only process, but just like you mentioned, really break out of what could be a pretty vicious cycle.
There was so much wisdom in this. Right, thank you. And I think too, and I love that you have such like awareness around how you really do bring this to your role. I think, I'm like, okay, step away, take a bubble bath, a deep breath. And you're like, Makenzi, you're in it. And this notion of like being curious and like asking more, I think is so powerful for like, okay, stress, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of things coming. Like, how do I just bring that down to earth for me for a moment so I can process it? Yeah. These what questions, I think that's such a great shift. What can I do to better engage? What resources do my team need? Yeah. Like, just to ground us. I think that's such a really...
I love that. Yeah.
You said it. I love it too.
Yeah, but I like the way you're thinking about it, because you're right. Like I even think about like if someone asks me like, well, why did you just like move this one resource to the next team? And it's like, I'm almost having to defend my decision. Whereas if they ask me like, what was the driver behind it? Or like, what can we do to support? I'm like, oh, great questions. I'm happy to tell you more about the rationale behind this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love this. And it helps, I think, just like you said, process change. And I think so often stress in modern working world, the industries that we're in, like so much of it is change. And like, it's happening at an insane pace. We're not the first ones to say that. It's definitely, and I just want to appreciate too, like the power of coaching again. I think just being able to have the container for these spaces. I love the idea of a strategy hour or a worry appointment. Yeah. Like, okay, I'll think about those big picture things here in a designated time where I can like give it the container that it needs in order to facilitate that. Those dedicated moments and that good thought, so that you don't spiral and derail.
No, which is the risk. And again, like someone who's lived through that and experienced it, certainly.
And I think, Ryan, you having lived through it and experienced it, and like I said, you've shared so much wisdom already, but I'm curious, like if a leader's watching this right now, which hopefully they are, hello leaders, and you feel like you might be on the edge of just like stress induced burnout, or you can feel this, like what's one micro shift they can make this week to begin to kind of re-regulate?
I think the note around like a micro shift, Makenzi, I think is also really powerful. Like I really do believe it can be these like smaller changes versus this like daunting overhaul, because especially when you're stressed, like, oh my goodness, does that feel incredibly overwhelming? But when you think about then managing the stress and managing through all these challenges, and like you said, that so much change is ongoing. Our world is fast evolving. I really appreciate these subtle or smaller changes. So like in terms of the regulating, I'd really recommend leaning on your peer network. And listen, I need to do more of this too. But
process.
We're of course. And I would say like to any leaders that are listening or will be listening, like if you're not already, like really work to deepen those relationships, whether it's one or maybe a couple of peers across your business, because you can really tap into, mutual support. You can think about, how do I gather resources or kind of advocate for needs. You guys might be sounding boards for each other more strategically as well. I have found that when I can find the relation between another leader that I'm working with, like peer to peer, I feel that sense of validation. I feel like I feel understood. I feel like I can kind of navigate through with a little bit more clarity as well. That has certainly been able to manage, my more stressful moments or even like stressful periods.
I love the idea of leaning on your peer network. Like, I think that that's really powerful and something that we advocate a lot for at Thodium. Actually, when you're talking
Yeah.
about coaching, is group
Yeah.
coaching,
Oh,
and
yeah.
being able to speak with a group of leaders. And I think even at the, and you
Mm-hmm.
know this, at the highest level of leadership, I think, the understanding the power of empathy, of agility, of relationships, and being able to have conversations and grow each other, like, is
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
critical to not only being able to like be more effective in the
Yeah.
business and drive bigger numbers and things, but like
Sure.
to regulate each other and meet each other as humans and like
Yes.
de-stress and be like, we can handle this and we've got
Yeah.
each other and we're working towards something that we care about.
Absolutely. I've walked out of conversations like actually feeling like I have the weight off my shoulders, where the sort of like pressure that was sitting there has since dissipated, and like it's helpful. And I like what you mentioned around like the human dimension of it. Like it becomes much more humanizing.
In a moment, in a spirit, Ryan, this has just been like such a fun conversation. I feel like I've learned so much. I hope the folks who are
Yes.
tuning in today have learned so much.
Thank
And
you.
in the spirit of humanness,
Yeah.
I personally love ending all my Navigating Now
Yeah.
episodes that I get the chance to host with one last question.
Okay.
So Ryan, what's one thing that has brought you joy this week? Tell
I
me.
love ending on that kind of note. Let's see. There's been a few things, but I will say I actually recently relocated to our GLG headquarters in New York City, which has been like, it's been really energizing to be here, continuing to grow the footprint of my East Coast US teams. And I'm getting to more closely collaborate with our executive leaders in the office, which is such a joy, and engaging with clients who are in New York and nearby. And again, like being able to immerse myself in this, like, I would say like vibrant culture that exists in our office and more broadly. I guess on a more like personal note, like having moved here just a few months ago, I have been able to witness, and for any basketball fans out there, the New York Knicks, who have risen to the top. They just won an NBA title. It was their first championship in 53 years. And to say this city has like come together, has been like electric, is like a complete understatement. Like, and by the way, like my teams at work, my friends, my family, they know how much of a devoted basketball fan I am. I absolutely love the NBA. So getting to be in New York, be part of that excitement, like see like the social media content of the team, the fans, that has been so awesome. Actually, earlier today, the Knicks championship parade and celebrations took place. So I was not there in person because there were, I would say like 1 million plus people in this like confined space. I was like, I cannot do this. But being able to, again, to see the coverage and experience like just the history of this as such a massive basketball fan, I would say that has brought me the personal joy this week, in addition to all the professional benefits I've mentioned as well.
Oh, Ryan, I love that. I didn't know that about you. Big basketball fan. What a time. What a time to be a basketball fan in New York.
It was a great time to move. I'm a few months in, and as soon as I moved, is like this like ascension to the ultimate title is pretty awesome.
Well, thank you for ending on a nice, joyful note. I love this. Ryan, thank you so much for just your passion, your knowledge, your willingness to share like the stresses, the joys, the whole of your human experience. So thank you tremendously. And thank you all for tuning in to episode 283 of Navigating Now.